First item is if you would turn off your cell phones or turn them to vibrate. Next item are the minutes.
Second.
Discussion.
Take a pic.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Need a motion on the memorandum of personnel transaction.
Move it. Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Pass it around. Next item is approval of a resolution thanking and commending for years of service.
I know it.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, I don't recall ever getting this one before. With the tax suspension for WS, as there's a forfeiture contract. Does that mean we get our tax dollars, Mike?
What's that?
Does that mean we get our tax dollars on a forfeiture of a contract?
Now that they're lifting the suspension, we should.
Is there a motion?
Move it. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have the recorder's report.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution approving and adopting the levy for the Little Sioux Intercounty Drainage District of Monona, Woodbury, and Harrison counties.
Move it. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. A resolution for approving the levying assessment for the McCandless Intercounty Drainage District of Monona and Woodbury counties.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a resolution adopting and levying the special assessment in the Sand Hill Lakeport Intercounty Drainage District of Monona and Woodbury County.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have the sheriff here in disguise.
Morning.
How are you?
Change uniform of the day or
I
what?
did, well, I'll tell you what, I was at the cleaners and I forgot to pick it up.
Did you want to address this, Dave, or?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that I met with Josh, County Attorney's Office, and PJ, and we made a couple little slight changes with words. And what we will do now is proceed to the towns and have them review their 2080 agreement. And from there, I'm sure they'll have their attorneys look through that. And after their attorneys look through it, we'll bring it back. They'll sign it, and then eventually the board would sign it at the very end. That's the procedure that Josh told me will take place. So we'll all the towns have their city council meetings, usually the first part of every month. So what my plans are this week, after speaking with the board about this, is to go to all the towns and give the clerks their copies so the council and their attorneys can review it. There is no real, big changes, nothing, just a matter of a word here or there.
Yeah, and I don't think our updated draft got into the packet. But like Dave said, there's no substantive changes to it, so I don't anticipate there would be problems with what we did. It's just we put it in the right format for the 20D agreement.
All right. Should we approve this now, or should we wait until the,
You could approve it as, kind of a final draft of the 2080 and authorize them to, send it out to the other communities, but, each 2080 agreement with each city will individually have to be approved and the chair authorized to sign.
That'll come later.
That'll come
All
later.
you'll do now is approve this.
Just approve it as a
This
final
boilerplate.
draft, basically as our offer to the other communities, that this is the agreement that we're offering, and then they can review it and come back.
Yeah, you don't, honestly, you don't have to take any action, but if you do, all you're doing is approving. You're updating what you discussed last week, right, changes. But each one will individually have to be approved.
Move it. I'll second the motion.
well, all we're doing is giving you the authority to go ahead and,
Right.
make a contract.
Yeah, we'll proceed on and,
Right.
yep, and then they'll, I think the only difference was, looking at Josh, a couple words at the end here, we always had the board chairman, the county auditor, but we added, the city clerk for the town along with the mayor and then the sheriff at the end, so I think that's, I can get you, all a copy of the newest one for your,
Or yeah, I think we should add.
that we have.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
You're in business. Ben?
Morning.
Morning.
Mark has some stuff in room today. You understand
Sorry I took your job.
Nobody listens to me.
Hi, with Pat. The first item is consider approval of the weed destruction order for 2013 with the specified dates. And Karen has that, Larry's signature, for the chair's signature.
Is there a motion?
I move the, chairman, you authorize to sign the weed destruction order.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next item is consider approval for permit to work in the right-of-way for the Woodbury County REC. This is underground electrical line in Grange Township. All lines are gonna be off the roadway and then bored under the roadway. There's gonna be no open cuts.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the third item is also consider approval of a permit to work in the right-of-way for the Woodbury County REC to install another underground electrical line in Mobile, Wolf Creek Township, similar to the item 2, no open cuts as board utility lines.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So did we put the blades back on yesterday?
Yeah, they're out doing a lot of sanding and scraping. I mean, it was pretty hard ice this morning. So, 38 degrees today, most of the roads should be in real good shape. Gravels are probably the next item that needs a lot of attention. It's been a good spring, the moisture's helped those a little bit, now we need to get into them. Add some gravel and do some shaping, and considerable number of calls the last couple of weeks. They're on board, do the best we can to stay ahead of those.
According to the weatherman, it's supposed to be 80 by Sunday.
Yeah, well, we're having some rain tomorrow again, so,
Amazing.
It is amazing.
yeah, more than from last year, that's for sure. Anything you'd like me to take back tomorrow for next week?
No, sir, I don't believe so.
Yes, would you see if I left a glasses case in the back of that car we took?
Certainly, yeah.
I'm
I'll
gonna
call
call
you.
him, but I know he's out of town. I think that's where it is.
It's just a case?
Yep.
Just a case.
All right,
I have the glasses.
I'll check
Just
when
put
I-
those in my pocket, maybe left the
Okay,
case
thank
in the
you.
back.
I'll check when I get
All
back.
right, thanks.
All right, sounds good. Okay, thank you guys.
Kind of a personal problem.
I know, but it was county business, I think it's related.
Copy that 20.
Comes point in the agenda, we're hearing of any individual or group that wishes to make a presentation. Anyone on the board? Anyone in the audience? Were you?
I'm sorry, was that open discussion at the end?
Yeah.
We're at the end already? Don't want to miss my opportunity. I wanted to update you just regarding the drug task force. We have been in, not negotiations, but we're losing a position and gaining one, and I wanted to just explain a little bit about what we're doing. Midwest Haida is high-intensity drug trafficking area. And years ago, when I was in the task force in 95, 96, this area was identified as a large drug trafficking area. We've never had that position funded through Haida. And so recently, we are, looks like, securing some dollars for that position to be funded. And so we'll have an additional person over there. Half that will be funded. We're already have the deputy, but part of that pay will be funded in the future, half of it. So it'll cover some additional overtime dollars.
By whom now, Sheriff?
Midwest Haida.
Okay, what's that? What are-
Midwest Haida is part of, they all have acronyms, so let me try to remember this. ONDC, help me, Greg, Office of Narcotics something.
Okay,
It all
all
comes
right.
out of Washington, the dollars.
Okay, it's federal money.
Right, and so half of that, those dollars, which we believe will be about 36,000, part of that will be designated to the extra deputy going over there as overtime, which is around 17,000 a year, and the additional dollars would pay for part of his salary. So we're pretty excited that we have an additional person over there to combat the local drug trafficking. So I was just bringing that up as something that I thought you may be interested in. And then lastly, I have one concern, and it's not of major proportion, but I just want to present it to you, is that when we have our transport officers, for example, go to Oakdale, and they may 4 or 5 hours across the state, drop them off another 4 or 5 hours back, they're incurring overtime because they're not allowed that half-hour lunch. It's my opinion, and the way I plan to proceed is that I believe that they would be entitled to that. It would be much cheaper to pay them that lunch than it would be the overtime. Because if you do the dollars, lunch can be purchased for $10 to $12, and the overtime is going to add up. And I just think sometimes it's just a better way of handling business. If we leave school and go to school for a day, and I'm not talking if we go to Cherokee and come back, but I'm talking if we're somewhere and come back to Des Moines, that they should be entitled to that, because when we met with Wage and Hour with all the elected officials and department heads, one of the things they discussed was if you're not doing that, you're going to be paying a considerable amount of overtime. So in order to save on that, I find that paying them a lunch is going to be a lot cheaper than the others. So when you see a bill come in, and I've discussed with the auditor, and Gene will flag it so that you know that was a day trip, and we'll still have it on our normal forms that Gene from the auditor's office is aware of. But,
Well, I think we, and help me out with this, Pat, I think we changed that because of the IRS regulations on a day travel. You know, your department was the first to send out a memo saying daily lunches, I guess, wouldn't be covered. So I think that's,
it's part of the.
is that what you're referring to?
Well, I think that it could be with the IRS, but they have a part of, and Pat better explain it to you, on our check that will show that it was taxed, or it could be taxable. Is that right? Yeah.
But what this all boils down to is I think think the board actually took made a policy that you weren't going to pay for meals unless there was no overnight stay involved.
Right.
That's a separate issue from
Okay.
the IRS. The IRS thing is, that's what brought this to a head, was that if you don't have an overnight stay involved, it's taxable. So it's just a separate issue.
Well, it's separate, other than that was a driving force, if I remember right, for the change in
Right,
the
I mean, that's
policy.
what it
was
was.
just to make it easier for bookkeeping and Anna, because we were getting a lot of things flagged and a lot of time was spent
Right.
trying to
And
sort
so-
out, and a lot of things were going on over that issue.
But what's going to occur is that if Sheriff Drew decides to do this, is that because you have a policy that says they want to pay for it, every one of those that comes in, that he has authorized a person to get paid for their meal without an overnight stay, is going to be flagged because it doesn't meet your policy. But that's between you and the sheriff deciding, what you want to do there in that case. But as far as we're concerned, we don't care. What we care about is that we're notified that it was did involve an overnight stay. And so it will be at the end of the year, in a separate box on their W-2 that's issued, it's going to say, it's a taxable item, that they were reimbursed for the meal. So it's taxable to the employee who got that benefit.
And that's, the matter comes down to the extra dollars that we're spending in overtime versus the meal. We're just a whole lot better off and cheaper to give them the credit card and they purchase a meal and they know there's an expectation how much lunch is, and it's gonna be much cheaper than paying that additional hours for the overtime. Because what happens
So
is,
there's overtime, because we're buying,
there would be, what happens is,
I
Right.
never realized that.
what happens is by contract, they're entitled to 1/2 hour of their own time. If they're not given that 1/2 hour of their own time, then they can put in for the overtime.
What happens, Dave, if they're on transport and they're out there, they're on duty the whole time?
Right.
Why wouldn't you still incur the overtime?
Well, you would, but that's just an additional, so maybe what they don't do is they say 9 hours and they don't add that extra 1/2 hour of that lunch that they would have got, so it could be 9.5 possibly.
Well, I don't know contractually how that works. This goes
Right.
back to the wage and hour thing.
Yeah,
Regardless of, what they're putting down, the amount of time that they're on duty is what they're gonna get paid for.
right. So in other words though, if, say for example, it's a 10-hour day and they're going to, because realistically, Oakdale trip would be a good 10, 11-hour day. Part of that, not getting that 1/2 hour could be added on to the end of that part of that day.
So has it been added on ever since your department sent out the memo? I mean, you guys are the leaders and
Right.
us changing our policy on it actually.
Right. I'm not sure why that got
So I
changed.
then when that happened, then there was overtime incurred as a result of that decision?
They would have probably incurred the overtime. They weren't allowed their lunchtime. So by contract, and the concern I have is if the union decides to proceed with that, we could have some issues going back. And I'd like to maybe nip that before it gets to that point.
Well, this is a whole new,
issue.
You got me confused
Yeah.
there. Let's say it's a 9-hour trip,
Right.
4.5 hours there, 4.5 hours there.
They work 8.5 hour day.
Okay. Why wouldn't they still get their break for lunch? Is that included in their?
Because they're not allowed to, they could take their break for lunch here at home. And so that becomes.
Away from their duties.
Yeah,
But they're constantly on duty when they're transporting.
right.
So they're paid for that 1/2 hour as overtime in the past. I can see that. Mhm.
It's just, I don't want to end up in some issues
Right.
down the road, I think.
But by contract, they should be allowed their 1/2 hour But it's impossible to separate that when you're transporting prisoners
Or-
from one place to another.
or out of town for
Yeah.
a school. I've checked with different police agency around, and for the day trip, what they do is to avoid the wage and hour issue, they get their meal and come back, and then part of that is, that's just part of their day, so we're not incurring extra. So I just doing that for a little heads up, so you can understand.
Yeah.
No, this is a county policy where we don't allow meals during the one-day travel. So if this is our policy, and Dave wants to do this, shouldn't we have an amendment to our policy with an exception there allowing them to do it?
I think we should,
Otherwise, what's our policy
yeah,
for?
yeah. Well, I think we
Well,
should,
that's a question that's,
absolutely,
Because I
but,
think Dave would disagree, but the board should probably agree too, to put that exception in our policy, and that'd be back to Joshua maybe. Should we have it in there, exceptions?
because I don't know how they're going to be able to, they're on duty all the time when they're transporting, long distances like that.
But they're only transporting one way, that's what's confusing me. You're transporting them down to Oakdale.
And back, they're coming back.
They're
Home.
Right.
Larry, it's the old saying, the home rule. If I'm here, I can go home for my half hour. But when I'm on the road, now I have to fork it out of my own pocket.
Right.
And so by not allowing them that, they can actually charge extra for that. So if Josh wants to research that, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to give you those, I don't want to end up with somebody
What
calculating.
if they're
figures.
transporting longer distances though? I mean,
Oh, yeah, well, we have someone leaving today, but I'm sure that's an overnight trip, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an overnight trip tonight, but most of it is, the Oakdale run, or we may send someone, to Des Moines, and to save money, we don't wanna send them overnight. Here's my issue, if there's a 10 o'clock, something starts at 9 in the morning or 10, listen, I think we can all get up and save the county a lot of dollars by getting up at 6 in the morning and driving. And then it might be a long day, but instead of spending the dollars for the hotel the night before, I sure feel like we're getting off a lot cheaper to buy them a lunch. I know that a lot of places are doing that, and I'd like to make sure that that's kind of the way we go. I think, there are meetings that we have in Des Moines. I'm not a big overnight stayer at a hotel. I'd rather get up in the morning and come back later. And we'd save ourselves a lot of money. Because now if I spend the night, I'm gonna have a meal on the way down, I'm gonna have a hotel, I'm gonna have a couple meals on the way back. I'm looking for a better way of doing business, and I think we can.
we did look at a lot of policies. I was chair when we passed that, and I know I worked with JD, I don't know if he's still here, and we did look at that as a board, a lot of policies, because it really was kind of a big issue.
Right?
With it all started with the
Oh, yeah.
IRS thing,
I agree.
and the claims coming in and signing them, and then, at that point in time, your sheriff, or the sheriff, took the initiative, and you sent out no more,
Right.
reimbursement, so we went, oh,
Right.
well, okay, it seemed like a good idea to us, because it just solved a lot of,
Yeah, and it may have
other
been,
issues.
right, it may have
What
been.
it caused, I was unaware
Right.
that it caused overtime charges, so I guess I just,
I think it may have been, we all know in your business experience, policies, the problem with blanket policies is sometimes it doesn't come, and policies always need to be reviewed and updated. I mean, I know we do at the sheriff's office, they're constantly changing, and they need to be reviewed constantly. So, I really strongly feel that this is something that could save us a lot of money as a whole, and I think we're better off for it. And I have nothing,
Well, let's expand this just a little bit more then. If we're gonna do it for transport people, I wonder if Pat wants to take a clerk with him, that should be at a meeting down there, starts at 8, ends at 4. You're gonna have overtime on both ends. Why can't this individual turn in her meal or his meal and do the same thing we're doing here?
I believe, and I'm not gonna speak for Pat, but
I'm just
there's a
using an
difference
example here.
of wage plan and
No, I'm not, okay, wage man, but hourly you're asking people, say take a clerk, or any office, take a clerk, 4, you own 7. I think you have to pay them overtime for road travel because they're still on duty. So why couldn't they get the, same situation here?
And, Dennis, in that situation, actually, it boils down to elected official versus
The policy.
employees that are under the board. You can make a policy that, you've made a policy, this board has made a policy, that employees that are under the direction of the board will not be reimbursed for meals that don't involve a overnight stay. And the only reason we did that was just to simplify the bookkeeping, is because we do that night shoes in my department. I don't reimburse for folks that don't involve overnight stay. I choose to go along with that policy. Mr. Drew has the sheriff group, has the ability to establish policy for his, as long as he can get the money out of his budget, he can do that. But as far as the policy goes, we can check with Josh, but from what I've read about personnel policy, that sort of thing, is that the elected official can do that.
So really, we only need personnel policies for our own department heads and their employees. We don't need to pass them
That's
through
what
the
the Attorney General's
elected
opinion,
official.
I don't know that I agree with that.
well, the Attorney General's opinion says that, Larry, you can.
No, I know, but you get an Attorney General's opinion on anything.
I know, but you also say that when it's convenient. But-
Right, I agree. I'm not.
And vice versa.
When it agrees with me, it's right. When it
That's
doesn't,
right.
it's wrong.
Well, listen, I'm not here to cause any issues.
But that's what this issue
Right,
is all about.
right.
That's what-
It's the same issue. I mean, it's what we had before.
Yeah.
All right, is this taxable income to them?
Yes, it is. It's completely separate from a contractual issue, it's completely separate from your policy. Is that it's an IRS regulation, is that if a person goes out of town and they are reimbursed for a meal, that is a taxable benefit. So on your W-2 in box 12, there's some box that it appears in, it will say that you received this, and this is taxable, it's added into your W-2 income, and it's taxed. So that's why we need from everybody who does that, that's what the bookkeeping issue is all about, is that we need to know when that occurs, because Gene has to put that in a separate category, so it appears on your W-2 as taxable income.
I don't know that I'm opposed to this, I don't know if I'm for it.
You know what, Larry, just,
We'll have to,
I don't think it really matters.
I have to understand it better.
I think Josh can do a little legwork for us.
and honestly, I think, Todd, if we first tell you, it isn't something that happens daily. I think that we're talking once in a great while, that we're taking some to Oakdale on, what would you guess?
We may have these long trips once a day, 2-3 times a month.
So,
We've, statewide, this is an issue too. We've discussed it, a lot of auditors that go at meetings, and what you will have is sometimes you will have an employee who says, hey, if you're not gonna pay for it, I'm gonna make it an overnight stay. And you end up costing the county more. for
Right.
doing it. That's always the dilemma.
That's right. I mean, that's the same, we have been through all
right,
this discussion.
well, I just, so you know, I know the state of Iowa employees, went after the governor and, on this issue, and the arbitrator ruled in favor of the state employees. So they're,
Because we looked at that and based
Right.
part of our decision-making on that, because at that
because
time,
that's what they did.
that's what they did.
Right, and so my understanding is now they're going back into the records and figuring out how to reimburse them all. We've been down that road, and I just wanted to stop that, so.
Or something,
But I'm trying to put the water leaking all over this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
we'll do it.
Interesting.
Unless there's anything else.
You don't. That's what else.
That's right.
What?
Let's go have lunch and charge it back.
Move to adjourn?
Yeah, we
Yeah, we're gonna-
just did her.